Hello, and welcome to Behind the Investigation, where we dive deep into the intriguing world of private investigation. My name is Mike, and I'm the owner and lead investigator of Elite Investigations here in Billings. I'm excited to be your host on this journey through the maze of mysteries and real-life cases that have shaped my career as a private investigator. I've spent years working on cases right here in Montana and beyond, from unraveling complex situations to chasing down leads in the most unexpected places. My experience has given me a unique perspective on what it truly means to seek the truth. In this show, I'll be sharing my stories from my life as a law enforcement officer and private investigator, including some of the most fascinating cases I've encountered, such as cheating spouse cases and missing person cases. We'll also discuss cold case homicides in Montana, those chilling mysteries that still linger and deserve our attention. Together, we'll explore current crime issues that affect our communities, and I'll share my insights and opinions on those pressing matters. I just want to be upfront with you. The first few episodes might be a little rough around the edges as I navigate this new medium, but I'm committed to learning and improving as we go along. Your understanding and support means the world as I refine my skills in the proceedings and producing this content. But that's not all. I want to connect with you, the viewer. About once a month or so, I'll be answering your questions sent in via social media or email. So if there's something you've always wanted to know about private investigation or a specific case or cases that you know of, don't hesitate to reach out, and I'll do my best to answer those questions. I'm thrilled, really truly thrilled, to embark on this journey with you, uncovering the truth and shedding light on the shadows. So grab a cup of coffee or your favorite drink, let's sit back, and let's get started on today's episode of Behind the Investigation. Welcome to Behind the Investigation. In this episode, we're going to be exploring a chilling cold case that has haunted the community of Billings, Montana for over 4 decades. The double homicide of Marlene Mazzola and George Heinrich. It all started back on September 21st, 1980. George Heinrich and Marlene Mazzola were discovered murdered in George's home near Shepherd. George was a divorced father, a well-respected businessman and cattle buyer, a familiar face in the community. Marlene had recently moved back to Billings from Butte, where she took a management position with Avon and was finalizing a divorce. She had just returned from a business trip to Denver the day before the murders. George and Marlene had met just a few weeks prior and were possibly on their second or third date. George was excited to cook dinner for Marlene at his home. After dinner, he took her out to dance at the Elks Club, which in 1980 was located on Lewis Avenue here in Billings. While at the club, George introduced Marlene to some of his family members. Witnesses reported that they danced all night and appeared to have a great time together. They left the club around 2 a.m. and headed back to George's house in Shepherd, and this would be the last time anyone saw them alive. The following day, George's younger daughter, Peggy, returned home from a weekend event, unaware of the horror she was about to encounter. When she entered the house and called out to her dad with no answer, she walked to the master bedroom, and upon entering, she found her father bound, face down on the floor with a pillowcase over his head. In shock, she ran to a neighbor's and called 911.
What's your emergency?
When deputies arrived shortly thereafter, they discovered Marlene in a similar position, also bound with a pillowcase over her head. However, her car was missing from the scene. Detectives believe that the killer or killers escaped in Marlene's 1979 Pontiac Le Mans, which was later located by detectives at the East Parkway Husky truck stop in the Heights, roughly where the Dairy Queen is now, about 8 to 10 miles away from the crime scene. The Yellowstone County detectives set up surveillance on the car, hoping the suspect would return, but no suspects were ever located. It is suspected that the perpetrator drove the vehicle away from the crime scene and left it at the truck stop for one reason or another. Keep in mind that in 1980, video surveillance wasn't as prevalent as it is today. You know, as we dive deeper into the case of George and Marlene, it is important to explore various aspects that enhance our understanding of this tragic event and shed light on the broader implications of such crimes. Let's begin with the investigation techniques that may have been employed in the case. In 1980, as we know, forensic science was still in its infancy compared to what we have today. Detectives likely relied on traditional methods of evidence collecting, such as fingerprints, blood splatter analysis, which can provide crucial links to suspects. Over time, advancements in DNA analysis have transformed the landscape of criminal investigations. Today, even the minute trace of DNA can be analyzed to identify a suspect. Imagine the potential breakthrough if DNA evidence had been available at the time of George and Marlene's murder. Investigators now have access to databases that allow them to compare DNA samples against millions of profiles, increasing the chance of solving cold cases. You know, back in an interview conducted about 9 years ago, Peggy, the youngest daughter, recalled the moment she discovered her father. She could not believe her eyes when she saw him on the floor, bound with the pillowcase over his head. She didn't venture far enough into the room to see Marlene. It was a nightmare she said she would never forget. But she also made mention that the bedroom door had appeared to be broken in, suggesting that her father George had tried to hold it shut in an attempt to keep the killer out. Aside from that, the rest of the house appeared to be largely undisturbed. There was no turned over furniture or anything. The only items missing were her father's valuable diamond ring, which at the time was valued at $16,000, and then a cheap green alarm clock that he had purchased on sale. There was even some cash left from a livestock sale untouched on a nightstand. The absence of a clear sign of robbery would indicate that the motive may not have been financial. Detectives considered various theories, including jealousy from individuals in George's life or some type of connection to Marlene's past. This double homicide sent shockwaves through the Billings community, making it one of the most prominent cases in the area that this city has witnessed in decades. Next, let's take a moment to remember George and Marlene as individuals, not just as victims. George was known to be a hardworking man who dedicated his life to his family and business. He was a beloved member of the community, known for his generosity and kindness. Marlene, on the other hand, was embarking on a new chapter in her life, filled with hope and ambition as she moved back to Billings to start a new life going through her divorce. Friends and family often describe them with anecdotes that paint a picture of their vibrant lives. George was known for his sense of humor and his ability to make others laugh with his charming stories. Marlene was passionate about her work and had a knack of connecting with people, a trait that served her well in her management position with Avon. These personal stories remind us that behind every case, there are lives filled with dreams and aspirations that are cut short by violence. George's older daughter, Cheryl, shared her thoughts in an interview conducted about 9 years ago also. When she received the news, it felt so surreal to her. Her dad was a loving, hardworking man. He was devoted to his daughters and full of life. The notion of him being taken away so violently is something she still struggles with. You know, George was a World War II veteran who he built a successful career as a farmer, rancher, and a cattle broker. He loved to dance and was known to be quite the ladies' man. His daughters believe he wouldn't have associated with any criminal element or engaged in any illegal activities, even if there was money to be made. You know, over the years, this investigation has pursued numerous leads and examined various potential motives. Yet the case remains unsolved, leaving the families and the communities yearning for an answer. So, now that we've explored the details of this shocking case, let's reflect on what we know. 1, George and Marlene were found brutally murdered in George's home, showing signs of strangulation and bound with electrical tape, pillowcase over their heads. 2, they were last seen enjoying a night at the Elks Lodge, filled with laughter and introductions to family. Just hours later, their lives were tragically cut short. And 3, the killer or killers fled the scene in Marlene's vehicle and dumped it off at the Husky truck stop. This brings us to a critical question. Who could have done this, such a heinous act? Could it have been a stranger lurking in the shadows, waiting for the perfect moment? Or perhaps a transient passing through, seeking an opportunity, maybe a jealous lover consumed by rage, or a close friend harboring resentment? Each of these scenarios carries its own implications. The lack of a forced entry suggests the killer or killers may have had some familiarity with one of the victims. But what could have driven them to such brutality? As we consider the potential suspects in this tragic case, it's essential to understand the broader context of homicide investigations. According to the FBI, nearly 70% of homicides involve someone familiar with the victim. This trend indicates that the motives behind such crimes often arise from complex emotions, likely jealousy, anger, betrayal, financial disputes. In many instances, the offenders turn out to be a friend, a family member, or an acquaintance, underscoring the unsettling reality that the greatest dangers may come from those closest to us. You know, in the case of George and Marlene, we must ask ourselves, could the assailant have been someone they trusted? Someone who felt slighted or overlooked? The evidence suggests that the nature of this crime points to a personal connection, making it all the more chilling. Do you remember the pillow case over the heads? It can be relatively common for a killer who knows their victim to cover the victim's face before killing them. This behavior may stem from various psychological motives. One is emotional distress. The killer might feel conflicted about their action, and covering the face can be a way of distancing themselves from the reality of the act of reducing their emotional turmoil. Dehumanization. By covering the victim's face, the killer may attempt to dehumanize the victim, making it easier to commit the act without feeling guilty or remorseful. Then there's control and power. Covering the face can serve as a way for the killer to exact control over the situation, symbolically silencing the victim and asserting dominance. Also, preventing recognition. In some cases, the killer may wish to prevent identification, especially if they fear that the witness may recognize the victim. And then there's the psychologically projecting. The act may reflect the killer's own feelings of shame or guilt, projecting their internal conflict onto the victim by obscuring their identity. Each case can vary significantly depending on individual circumstances and psychological profiles. I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts? Who do you believe could have committed this crime? What could possibly be the motives? Your insight could be vital in piecing together the puzzle. Join the conversation in our social media platform and share your theories. As we continue to untangle this mystery, we encourage you to keep these statistics in mind. Understanding the dynamics of relationships can be crucial in identifying potential motives and suspects in cases like this. Even after all these years, the family of George and Marlene still hold out hope that someone will come forward with information. They want justice for George and Marlene. The passage of time doesn't diminish the truth, and these families deserve answers. I urge anyone with even the slightest information to contact the Yellowstone County Sheriff's Department. No detail is too small. Your tip could be the key to solving this cold case. They can be reached at 406-256-2929. Together, we can honor the memory of those lost and bring hope to their loved ones. You know, as we conclude today's episode, let us remember that the pursuit of truth and justice is vital. Stories of George and Marlene remind us of the fragility of life and the importance of standing together as a community. I'd like to leave you with a quote. Justice delayed is justice denied. Let's not forget the victims and continue to seek answers for the families who suffer in silence. I want to thank you for joining me on this first episode of Behind the Investigation. Stay safe, stay curious, and we'll uncover more mysteries together. And until next time,